to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Meeting of the Wahoo City Council, Tuesday, July 11th, 7:00 p.m. Open Meetings Act is posted on the wall. More information at City Hall if you need to look into it deeper. Call meeting to order and roll call.
Stuart Creechy.
Here.
Shane Sweet.
Here.
Carl Warford.
Here.
Brian Diaz.
Here.
Chris Rappel.
Here.
Patrick Nagel.
Here.
Is there anybody in the audience that wants to make some comments on items that are not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on. Department head reports, there's two of them in your packet, library and park and rec, and is Joe coming?
Well, I just got a text that says he's in pursuit of a robbery suspect.
Oh.
So he's not going to make it. But his report is.
His report is. Have a copy? Okay. That looks like they're fairly active. There's some big numbers that are scary. Some of those that are liquor violations and high. Paraphernalia and controlled substances are high, but that's the ones we're catching. Anybody have any thoughts or questions on that? Melissa, do you have some?
I just have a couple
Report.
things and I'll just.
Okay.
So first of all, I just want to publicly, I guess, offer appreciation for the years of service that Rick Sabatka provided to the city. He started in, I think he had 38 years of service with the city, so I know his last few days were hard, but we appreciate his service, so just want to acknowledge that. The other things to have to report on today, we had a construction update meeting on Wilma Ridge. They're a little bit behind because of the rain, but they're planning, it's not ground that they can't make up, and so we've had good attendance at these meetings by the developer, and everybody's sort of keeping the ball rolling and moving forward. We did receive, I think I've maybe told you this before, we have received the information for North Highlands Phase 2, so that'll be coming before you at the first meeting in August to the council for consideration of the final plat. Last week we did have the governor visited Wahoo out at the airport and introduced the NDOT director, Vicki Kramer, the new economic development director, Casey Baylitz, and the broadband office director, which is Patrick Haggerty, I believe. And so that we had a good turnout for that, and it was a beautiful day if you were able to make it out there. On Thursday, we will be out at the airport again. We're having a ribbon cutting for the runway project, which has been open for almost a year, but it is something that we needed to take care of to do. Staff-wise, we're working on budgeting. It's going to be, I guess, it's going to be a challenge this year. At our next council meeting, you'll have the alarm proposal for our insurance renewal, and there's a significant increase in that, which is just across the board. Property insurance across the board is a hard market and is going up. So we have those increases. We need to stay competitive on our wages in order to hire staff. We need to provide competitive benefits. We need to be able to maintain the properties that we have, as well as the equipment we have, replace our equipment, all of those things. It makes for, you hear a lot of officials saying you need to cut taxes, cut taxes, cut taxes, but how are we supposed to do? I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I just want to, this is going to, we've got some work to do as we prepare for this budget. So aside from that, I have nothing else.
Okay, we'll move to consent agenda. Several items on here, some of them are fairly large with pay downs and housing and instructions, so if anybody has any questions, I'm sure Melissa can answer them.
The Send stuff is showing zero matches. That's their piece, our piece. I'm mildly confused. Because I thought we were paying like smaller pieces of all of these projects, so I'm trying to understand.
So the drawdown request grant funds will be deposited into our account. Once those grant funds are received, then we'll make the payments. Right now, we have our match completely in the account, so there may be little pieces of each one of these that are covered by our match, but the majority of that will be through by grant
So,
funds.
okay.
Yep.
That's what I want to make sure.
Any other questions?
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Second? Any questions, comments? Motion to approve, roll call.
Warford,
Yes.
Krejci,
Yes.
Sweet,
Yes.
Ideas,
Yes.
Rappel,
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Okay, we'll convene as the Community Development Authority. First one is a resolution to provide recommendations for approval or denial of amendment to the redevelopment plan of the city to include a redevelopment project utilizing tax increment financing on Kennedy Park Development Project, which is Block 2 and Block 5 of Dickinson Addition, City of Wahoo.
So sitting as the CDA, it's essentially, as you are one and the same, CDA and the council are one and the same, you're both going to be sort of doing very similar actions. And so I just want to spend a little bit of time running through some of the highlights of the amendment and then the redevelopment agreement for the Kennedy South Hall project. If you want, there are, right beside Ryan, there are copies of the redevelopment plan amendment to your right, Ryan.
Oh.
There. A couple of things that I want to call your attention to that have changed from our initial conversation on this project was instead of the phase one, I guess let me back up just a little bit. This project is going to be accomplished in 2 phases. Phase 1 will be the remodeling of South Hall. Phase 2 will be the townhomes units that are apartment units that are being built, the garage unit, and the public improvement of the park. So phase 1 is going to be 12 units, 9 one-bedroom and 3 two-bedroom units. That's changed a little bit. When it was originally proposed, there was more studio units included in that. So with a phase 1, the developer would make a purchase of the ground. That is that lot, I don't know, I think it's lot 2. We would deed that as a CDA to him. He'd purchase it for $20,000 and move forward with his redevelopment of that. And when that phase 1 is completed, which we're hoping is to be done by December of 2024, that 15-year clock will start ticking on that project. Then you'll move into phase 2, and prior to doing phase 2, we will do a combination of the 2 lots, and then we'll split off where the park is going to go. So at the end of the project, there will be 1 lot that will have South Hall, the units, the apartment units that are being constructed, the garage unit that's being built, that will be lot 1. Lot 2 will be the park project. So the city has incurred costs with acquiring the South Hall property as well as the asbestos abatement, and so I am proposing that we recover the cost of, which is about $17,700. We do have some administrative time in that as well, so I'm proposing that a cost of $20,000 purchase of that lot for South Hall. For the other piece where currently the basketball court sits, the city is going to be winning with this project and getting a new basketball sports court area, and so I'm proposing $0 for the purchase of that. We're not really out anything. We have mowed it, used it as a park for a number of years, and so obviously that's your decision to make, but that's what I've kind of worked out with the developer. The maximum amount, well, not the project could yield up to $786,000 of TIF, but the notes will be issued phase 1 and phase 2 of something a little bit less than that, $731,100, and that is based off of the proposed listing of expenses that you see on page 5 at the top. Again, splitting it into 2 phases allows the developer to maximize the amount of incremental money, that tax increment financing that they're going to be getting back, because the 15-year clock starts separately for both phases. One thing that I wanted to call attention to, it's not in the agreement, or the amendment, it is in the agreement, but that if the developer is not successful with the completion of phase 1, then the city has no obligation to move forward with phase 2. So I guess that's just a little bit of an assurance. That's why we're not deeding or selling the entire, both lots to the developer. We're doing the one with South Hall first. When that's successfully completed, then we'll move to phase 2, which will be the second lot. And that's a sort of an assurance that the city will still, that lot, that empty lot where the park is, won't be tied up into financing of South Hall. Trying to think what else. In the redevelopment agreement, there's a couple, on page 6 of the redevelopment agreement, which you don't have in front of you, but I want to be clear that it specifically says the TIF indebtedness shall not be a general obligation of the CDA or the city, which shall issue the notes solely as a conduit. So we have no financial obligation to pay the notes. It really is if the developer pays the tax on the property, the tax gets sent to us by the county treasurer, we turn around and return that tax to whoever holds the note. So there is not a risk financially for the city. When we're talking about the public improvements, there is, in section 4.02 of the agreement, there is a penal bond that's required in the amount of all of the work that's supposed to be performed in the public right-of-way and or on the public property. So that's required by the Redevelopment Act in statute, and that's up to the CDA to determine whether they want to move forward with that or not. But it is in the agreement that we have the right to request that as a guarantee that the work in the public, so the park space and the work in the public right-of-way gets completed and we're not left with something unfinished. So, with that, I will answer any questions or try to answer any questions about the agreement or the amendment. If you have questions specifically about the project itself, I know Mike and his attorney are here as well. So. And if you don't have any questions, then your next steps would be to do a resolution to recommend approval of the amendment, a resolution to recommend approval of the agreement. Then we would hold a public hearing, giving the public entities that where they're all of the taxing entities were sent notice. They would then have the opportunity to object or not object, whatever, and then the council would do the same actions.
Well, I think the project is structured nicely that the first phase gets done before the second phase really gets started, before the city has to hand over that second lot. But I'm glad to see the project moving forward.
Yeah.
I will say at the end of the project, before any money, the city pays any of the incremental tax that comes in, before that goes back to the developer, there are evidence needs to be presented by the developer that these in fact are the eligible expenses. So if he put in a basketball court, he needs to show us evidence in the form of an invoice that he actually paid and put in the basketball court. So that is our supporting documents that This money is going for public improvements that are allowed by statute, if that makes sense.
The steps that the council has to go through or will go through yet, what's the timetable? When would the developer be able to start work on the South Hall?
So as soon as the documents are signed, from our standpoint, the developer could begin incurring any expenses that he would like to use as eligible expenses. So I know that's a big, anytime to
Anytime.
move forward, anytime after these documents are signed.
Okay,
And is there an expiration date on any of these documents? If nothing gets done on the project for the next year or two, is it still a valid agreement?
Yeah, so project one, the phase one completion date means on or before December 31st of 2024. And phase two is December 31st of 2026. What that means is that's when the 15-year clock will start turning. So if he doesn't have the project completed by those deadlines, then he's losing the value of TIF, right? The clock starts turning. So there is a section in, let me find it here, in the agreement that says that, so on the closing date, which whatever we agree to, will deliver a warranty deed for the land. The section 5.06 says that in the event the redeveloper fails to commence construction of phase one within 120 days of the first conveyance, which is the date that we deed that property, the CDA shall be entitled at its option to repurchase the property to be conveyed in the first conveyance back from the redeveloper upon payment to the redeveloper of the purchase price. So is that what you were looking for?
Yes.
Right.
And I know the agreement does talk about, in essence, a performance bond,
Right, which is that penal bond.
that penal bond. And I guess it's only fair to make sure that the developer has the funds available. Maybe instead of that, we ask for, you know, a commitment that his financing is in place or something like that.
So in the agreement as well, under the article, it talks about the obligations of the redeveloper. It says, within 30 days of written request from the CDA to the redeveloper shall provide to the CDA evidence of availability of the specific amount of finances necessary for purposes of carrying out the commitment of the redeveloper in connection with acquisition of the project site and construction of the public improvements and the private improvements, which may come in a form of letter by redeveloper's construction lender. So we can actually ask for that evidence to be submitted. This goes on to talk about our obligation to protect confidentiality and such, but there is that opportunity for us to request that in this document.
any other questions? What's the council's desire?
Well, I guess as a CDA,
Yes, it
I
is.
would make a resolution to recommend approval, as we've talked about on this project. Or approving the amendment,
Right.
and then the separate action. Okay, so we'll do the amendment first.
That's a separate, yeah. This is just what's first page of the Development Authority.
Did you hear him?
Yes.
Okay.
Speak quiet over there.
Second.
The motion made, wild, but second. Any other questions? Roll call on the resolution to provide the recommendation.
Preaching,
Yes.
Warford,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Rappel,
Yes.
Ideas,
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes.
Okay, then the second is a resolution to provide recommendation of approval or denial of a redevelopment agreement for the Kennedy Park redevelopment project.
So moved.
Second. Approval presumably.
Yes.
Yeah.
For approval.
Yes.
Whichever
Yeah.
one is needed.
There's a motion and a second. Any questions? Roll call.
Creachy,
Yes.
Warford,
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Okay, now we reconvene as a city council. First is the public hearing on amendment for the redevelopment plan of the city of Wahoo to include a redevelopment project utilizing tax increment financing, project known as Kennedy Park redevelopment project, generally located 12th and Loca, including blocks 2 and 5, Dickinson Addition, city of Wahoo. Pretty much what we just went through, but it is a public hearing. Is there a motion to open the public? No, I'll open the public hearing. Any comments from the public?
So just so you guys have an understanding, we are required to publish the notice 2 times in the newspaper, plus send a certified letter to all of the taxing entities, so, and we received notice that they all received their notification.
I'll ask again, any comments from the public? If not, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Warford,
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Creachy.
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Sweet.
Number 2 is a resolution to approve the amendment of the redevelopment plan, City of Wahoo for Kennedy Park Development Project.
I would make that motion to approve the amendment.
Okay,
I'll second.
questions, comments, roll call.
Creachy.
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes.
Warford.
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Number 3, resolution to approve the redevelopment agreement for the Kennedy Park Development Project.
I would make that motion.
I will second that.
Okay, questions, comments, roll call.
Creachy.
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Warford.
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Okay, no old business, no table business, action items. Request for waiver of sidewalk requirement or sidewalk location requirement for project located at 13th and Spruce. The developer is here. Travis, do you have any comments on it?
Yeah, so basically what you have in front of you there is, I'm sure you're familiar with it. There's a triplex that's being built on the corner of 13th and Spruce. With the elevation and everything, with the target that they're going for of the zero entrance and everything, putting a sidewalk in that location would make the driveways a little steeper than what they would like. I've got photos in there. Currently there isn't any sidewalks adjacent to any side of that property. So this would be the only area with sidewalks being put in. Within our municipal code and everything, sidewalks are required for the new to be installed. Generally the sidewalks are put in before we'll give occupancy. If you recall with Laurel Brook Estates, when they came in there with all those, because of the steepness of driveways and stuff, they had requested for the waiver. We ended up negotiating closer to the curb for that because there was other sidewalks. So they was able to go closer to the curb to make the driveways less as steep. In this situation, there isn't any other sidewalks in the location, but it still has to go before the council here for any changes of that per the municipal code.
Is there any plan to have sidewalk along there? I mean, in the future, for the other properties?
I don't believe that there's any trail system or anything like that that's planned. I did speak with Melissa earlier today, looking at the lay of the land and everything else. If sidewalks would be required, ideally I think it'd be better to have sidewalks on the east side of Spruce simply because of the elevation and everything else. If you go further north, you have Gaylord Anderson's property, which has a very steep incline already, so to do it properly you'd be looking at retaining wall and different stuff like that to be put in there. So
yeah, the west side of that street is very, and that fall is really significant.
and if you go up on 13th, there isn't sidewalk on either side of that currently either, but
Because those things are just so steep, I don't know if you'll
Yeah, that
have
was-
sidewalk on those things.
Yeah, that'd be, you'd almost have to have.
Cycle.
Wheelchair's gonna go all the way across the street.
Yeah.
know if you got anything to add on or.
I just hate putting anything in the sidewalk. I mean, that's how you end up
I mean,
where we're at now, where we have this hodgepodge of sidewalks anywhere. I hate I understand that geographically or whatever, the topography of the area doesn't allow it, but I just hate it.
But yeah, there's no sidewalks on Spruce or any of those 13th, 14th, and 15th. You put sidewalk there, that's not a sidewalk that's ever gonna be there.
Sidewalk nowhere.
I agree, I think the east side makes more sense if you were, I would like to see some planning for sidewalks, specifically in a few places I can think of that would be well ahead of this, that would be safe for routes to get to different places, but.
Well, and presumably, since there wouldn't be new construction, it would have to be a city project, right? It'd have to be the city coming in and itself paying to put sidewalks in. So the question would be, in that situation, where would the city actually want to allocate its resources and put the sidewalks, right?
Right,
So
yeah.
if it's on the opposite side, then presumably that would be the solution
Right.
to the issue.
I mean, I'm sure aware that, closer to the curb and there's, in the wintertime, snow gets piled on it, so that has to be removed, but, it's gotta be removed anyway, but maybe a different apparatus, but.
I mean, remember the project, or the house that was there, that had no sidewalks, this is
Yeah.
vastly better.
Yeah,
It's a nice
absolutely.
improvement. And I can't see where you would need a sidewalk that doesn't hook to anybody else. Yeah, I'd love to see sidewalks in other parts of town before I would want to do anything here.
And I think logically here, probably the other side of the street would make a lot more sense.
Well, and legally, I think that's our out, because I think we'd have a little bit of an ADA issue, just generally waiving sidewalk requirements, saying that we could never require one to be placed there and or ourselves place one there. We have to have some mechanism for an alternative, right? In the event that you decide to do it, and so that would have to be it.
It's a pleasure.
What's our action? Are we making a motion to waive?
Yes.
Yes, request to waive, sidewalk requirement, the
I'd make
location of
that
it.
motion.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Ideas?
Yes.
Krejci?
Yes.
Rappel?
Yes.
Nagel?
Yes.
Warford?
Oh,
Sweet.
Yes.
Okay, passes. Number 2, approve or deny claim filed against the city of Wahoo by Chad White in the amount of $649.41. There's detail in your packet, letters, pretty well documented as to what occurred.
Chad is president.
Oh, okay. Chad, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, just looking for reimbursement for the replacement of my rear window. So I work from home, obviously. I think April 19th, after a storm, the street sweeper came down to clear out the washout, as far as what I was told by the city. That occurred about a little bit before 3, and then went out to go get in my car to go pick up my children. When I went to back out, look out my rear window, I can't see because it's shattered. It wasn't like that in the morning when I took my kids to school. So my only option, or my only thought is it had to have been a rock that got flung up by the street sweeper and just chipped it and shattered it.
What's your legal, what options do we have?
Yeah, and so obviously this is the claim presentment process, so you have the ability to either consider the claim on an ongoing basis, because you have upwards of 6 months to make consideration for that, deny the claim or accept the claim. This one's a little in the more of the gray area than we typically run into.
Right.
When we deal with potholes, when we deal with sewer backups, that sort of thing, those are clearly municipal functions and not something that we were put on express notice of. And generally the law says, look, if we didn't know there was an issue, we didn't fail to act as a result of the issue, just because there's a damage or an injury doesn't mean that the municipality can be liable for it. And again, as we talked about before, the concept there is because they don't want municipalities, or the state doesn't want municipalities to have to pay for every damage that occurs as a result of some sort of public activity and or public infrastructure. You know, it would cost taxpayers a lot of money if that were the case, right? And so commonly we deny claims that come in front of the council for tort claims. Generally what you're looking at here is, one, was it well, I guess like preliminarily, did the street sweeper and or the city function cause the damage? If the answer to that is no, then it's a hard stop. You deny the claim. If the answer is yes, then you go to the next question, which is, was it a governmental function or not? I.e., was someone doing a normal governmental activity, or was it something that was awry, an employee did something they shouldn't have, that sort of thing? Because if the employee certainly was acting outside the scope of what they should have been doing, was negligent, then that would be, you ought to pay the claim, right, in that situation. The third factor there would be, if one, it did cause the damage, and two, there was a governmental function, they weren't outside of that, then three, is there some element of negligence there, i.e. Were they operating the sweeper over an area that clearly they should have, done something in advance of that to make sure that rock and debris weren't in there before they drove over it, that sort of thing. Knowing that a reasonable person would have known that it would have shot something out the side and potentially caused damage to someone. That's kind of the factual ascertainment that you're trying to make here, and trying to decide whether or not those factors line up such that you want to go ahead and approve the claim or deny it.
So as a point of clarification, you did not see anything happen, the sweeper operator did not see anything. You know you have a broken window, obviously,
Yeah.
but in no time did anybody really see the event.
Didn't see the event, obviously heard him go down, heard a different type of noise, but not enough to make me go check right away.
Was there an object in the back seat that might have?
I did not find any, just the shattered window pieces.
But you did say that you took your children to school that morning and it was not
Correct.
for sure.
Yeah, and I was able to look out the windshield, the back window perfectly, no obstruction.
If the street sweeper knocked over a mailbox, for example, what would the city's action be then?
Yeah, I mean, as an example, if
Or
the
what's
operator's
policy?
going down the area and clips it as a result of something they couldn't have seen or known, then I would say you would deny that claim. If the operator starts to fall asleep and veers over onto the area, that's their negligence, you would approve the claim, right? So it's really based on the facts of what happened and what caused what happened, right? It's not enough, in a normal setting, if this wasn't a municipality, it would be enough that I drove over that area, something shot out and caused the damage, I'd be liable for it, right? The difference is here with the city, it's not enough to say that. You have to say, were they doing something outside the scope of what they were supposed to be doing? Because cities are exempt from normal governmental actions.
What is the policy on driving a street sweeper down a rocky
Alleyway.
alleyway?
It's
I
a
mean, that
big
just
alley,
doesn't
they're just
seem-
cleaning it to get the rock out from going into the sewer inlets, which cause other issues if all that rock gets into the sewer inlets. I know why Joe is having to do it. It's to maintain the sewer inlets that are at the end of the alleys. Because if those fill up with rock, then the water can't drain it in, potentially could flood somebody's house.
And
Yeah.
I think it was the night before, there was a storm,
Yeah.
and that it is a standard thing that we go out and do, is clean up the alleys, because the rainwater washes the gravel and such out into the street, so.
Is there such a thing as partial liability?
I mean, only through settlement. I mean, I don't think from a legal perspective, a person can acknowledge fault but then pay a portion of it, right? I mean, the only reason you would do that is if you said, well, you submitted 5 invoices. 3 invoices we think were related to this activity, the last 2 weren't. So we're gonna deny the last 2 and admit the 3. Here, I think it's somewhat either black or white. You're either gonna pay the whole thing or you're not, particularly at this amount. To me, if you're going to say, we think that the sweeper did cause the damage and we think that it was a authorized governmental activity, but still approve the claim, I think that gives rise, in my mind at least, to say, okay, Joe and company, should we change our policies or procedures in some way to prevent this a little bit for the next time? Because you don't want to just say, they were doing everything they should have and it caused damage and we're liable for it. You'd want to say, how are we going to prevent it in the future? And
It'd be like,
deal with it.
when they're snow plowing, if they're going too fast and it's a wet snow and it knocks over somebody's mailbox, usually you might replace the mailbox and then the policy would be is slow down.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, can we go slower and not throw the snow as far, as fast, as hard? That's one way to prevent it from happening in the future, because they were doing what they're supposed to, but if they're driving too fast, it causes a problem. And something similar to this, what can Joe maybe do, if we do approve this, like, what can the street department do differently
Yeah.
to try to prevent that happening?
Well, I'm trying to think what attachment, right? I mean, is this an actual street sweeper, or are we talking about like the brush attachment which spits everything out forward? So I'm sitting here thinking, well, if you drove a lawnmower down
Is it
the
a
alley and
box,
started
is
shooting
it a
rocks
box one
everywhere,
that sits on the front of
don't
the
do that.
Bobcat? Or-
Yeah,
Right,
it
so
was
that's
the
what I'm wondering,
Bobcat
is this
with
the
the-
machine that has the
the
front
box
brush
one,
that goes everything forward and it's brushing forward? Because if it's brushing forward, yeah, don't hit rocks when you're facing the vehicle, that's a bad idea.
It does say Bobcat broom sweeper.
So that, and they spin
Yeah.
forward, right?
Well,
So,
it depends on which way you hit the button.
oh, okay. And again, I don't do this, but I'm picturing that vehicle, I know we have one that
Because
runs
it's,
around like
it's,
that.
well, the one
If
that.
that's what we're talking
If it's on a
about.
Bobcat, it'll have a box in front that they should be brooming everything, so it throws it back into the box. So it keeps all the debris, so then they can take that and dump that into like a truck or into a pile to be picked up and removed. Sometimes they brush them forward, but it should be
Pulling it
brushing to
in.
pull it in to itself.
Okay, so I guess I'm still from the standpoint, no one's really seen the event happen. If the brush is working properly, it would be drawing rocks in, not kicking them out. So I guess I'm still trying to grasp how that potentially, I know that the sweeper is in the alley at during a period of time, but that does not indicate liability to me.
There's an assumption being made.
Yes.
So how would this type of a brush properly operate? I mean, is it possibility that
Oh, there's stuff that does get
it
tossed
could
off
throw
the
one
side.
to the side?
Sure.
It does.
Okay.
I've seen debris still coming off the side, and they just have to make, on my job sites, they're making 3 or 4 passes to pick up some stuff, because some stuff does get hit out to the side. I mean, there's no perfect broom unless you're painting.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I don't think we've heard enough from the city employees and the stuff that we're doing, the actual project to make a decision. Determination, we're basing it right now on the person that had a damaged fan at their vehicle, and now we're just making assumptions as we're sitting here, whether he had it going one way or another, if something flew out, we don't, I mean, we're guessing, and I think I would like to have more information before.
Yeah, and you're under no obligation to approve or deny it tonight. What happens is it gets tabled to the extent that you want to further consider it. And I think what you're saying is basically you'd be asking them, hey, is it possible that this did happen, right?
Well, and,
Yeah.
you know, were they, you know, Pat just said that, you know, depending on which way you have the lever,
Depending on which way
the thing
you
was
get through.
going. What is the procedure when you're doing this? Are they pushing stuff up into a pile and then going, reversing the brush and then bringing it all back in and things of that nature? I would like to know that before.
It just depends on which way you're having the hydraulic pump
Yeah.
pushing oil. It's either oil this way and it's brooming this way. If the oil's going this way, then it's brooming another way, so.
And here what Joe found out, talking to the operator, you know,
Yeah.
get a little more
Yeah,
information
because
there.
what they, I mean, all he said was, you know, I was working at the clean outs and I didn't notice it, which doesn't really tell us exactly what they were doing there. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that, I would like to establish whether or not it happened, and then, you know, if there is something that could be done to avoid it. Because I feel like those are important.
I think having Joe here would have been good.
Kind of hearing no action tonight and table it for more action, information internally.
So moved.
Okay. Motion to table in second.
We can make sure that Joe is present at the next meeting to review that.
Talk about to me.
Pat,
Okay.
operate
Yeah.
with me, that idea.
Yeah.
Or at least, an opportunity to ask those questions to Pat.
There is a motion, is there a
So
second?
we have a motion, I second.
Okay. Any other questions? Roll call.
Warford,
Yes.
Sweet,
Yes.
Creachy,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Rappel,
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Approval of the second reading of ordinance 2437 to provide for the annexation of the water tower site. Remember, this could not be waived. We have to go the full 3 readings
Do you need a motion to introduce?
to
Second
have the
reading.
second
Second
reading.
reading.
Motion to have the second
I'll
reading.
second that.
Okay. Roll call.
Warford,
Yes.
Creachy,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Sweet,
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Number 4, approval of ordinance 2438 to authorize the issuance of general obligation various purpose bonds, series 2023, in the amount not to exceed $1,525,000 for the purpose of providing permanent financing for various street improvement projects within the city.
So this is the last piece of the North Highlands Phase 1 project. It's moving from when we brought the project, we did an internal borrow from the utilities. And there have been a number of the lots paid in full, along with the 1/10 paid on those outstanding. We levied the assessments, they paid 1/10 on all the lots. So this amount of not to exceed 1.5 million takes all of that into account, so we're ready to move to permanent financing on this. I don't know, Cody Wickham is here if you have any questions on.
What's your thoughts on private rates?
Well, that's the
We're gonna have a debate now.
$1.5 million question, I guess.
Might as well join in on it, Ron.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cody Wickham with D.A. Davidson. Good to see you all again. It's just been about 6 weeks since we just did the note financing that we're actually closing tomorrow. This is different. This is looking at long-term financing, as Melissa pointed out, for the North Highlands project. Street improvement districts are by statute only allowed to go out 15 years, so that's what we're looking at to just kind of keep your annual cash flow as reasonable, I guess, as we can. As far as the interest rate question go, it's kind of challenging out there in the marketplace right now. There's very little banks that are buying bonds. These bonds will be bank qualified, but it's just not getting us that much bang for the buck right now. I would expect almost all of these, given the size and the duration, to be sold to retail accounts. Fortunately, our firm has a substantial retail department, so we will be able to get this deal done. You're probably going to be looking somewhere in the mid-4s for your true interest cost on these. What we've also looked at, and retail accounts are less likely to balk at, is a 3-year call feature, meaning you could refinance these 3 years from when we close this issue. So if this is passed and 3 reading rule waived, we can close this issue in 30 days from today. So 3 years from that dated date, you could look at refinancing these to lower interest rates if the market environment is such that it's favorable. The normal for that is 5 years. So I think if we can get you a 3-year call without giving up any extra basis points on that, it's going to help out the district, assuming things are a little bit better in 2026.
Is there any rate advantage to looking at 10-year instead of 15?
Not much, to be honest. It's kind of like with the notes. Normally, the shorter you go, the lower your true interest cost is. But on the note issue, 2 years was actually going to be a little bit higher than going 3 or 4. So it's that weird inverted yield curve that we're dealing with right now. There is a sweet spot. I can certainly look at that. Our ordinance that's in front of you tonight is simply the parameters. So as Melissa said, it's not to exceed $1,525,000. Once you kind of gather all the assessments, we expect that amount to be lower. We did not to exceed the 15 years, but we could certainly look at less. So kind of like we did with the notes, we have all the flexibility. We can look at 8, 9, 10, up to 15 years and see which structure is going to get us that lowest total borrowing cost for the city, and we can go with that, assuming that's what you want to do.
Yeah, more likely it will be mid-4s. We're lucky to be mid-4s. So
Yeah, I think if we're going 15 years, it's going to be around that 4.5 would be my guess. There will be some maturities that'll be a little less, but when you average them all out, the blended average is going to be right around 4.5s. I did bring up some information for you too, if you'd like me to hand these out. This is just similar to kind of last go around. I'll start, this is kind of the recent city deals that have been done and fee comparisons, and then going around this way is the MMD, which there's 3 different graphs there. The top graph is 20-year AAA rates. The middle graph is 10-year AAA rates, and then the bottom is 1 year. So if we're, gonna land somewhere in between the top and the middle graph, you can kind of see it's not total doom and gloom. If you look at the legend, the boxes in the corner, it shows what the kind of the high, the low, and the current are for those interest rates. And you can see, and I handed out all of them, so now I need one of them back.
You can have 2 of them.
Okay. All right, that helps me here. So on the, you can see on the 20-year AAA rates, the latest is a 3.34%. And if you look down at the bottom, or towards the bottom, the maximum over the last 10 years was 4.27, and the average is 2.90. So you see some of these things in mortgage rates and ag lending rates that are really, really high. If you look at the tax exempt market, it's not all doom and gloom. We're actually only about 40 basis points above the average over the last 10 years on the long end of the curve, and same goes for the 10-year. The latest we're at a 2.64%, and the average was a 2.21%. So again, 43 basis points above the average. So, it feels like it's not the best time to issue debt, but really when you look at it big picture, it's not too much skewed from the average. And if we take different steps to help you have the ability to refinance sooner than later, I think that would be advantageous to the city.
And then there's no reason to wait today either. It's
Right.
It's not gonna get any better in the next 60 days.
That's exactly right. I think all signs are pointing to another 25 basis point hike, potentially by the end of the month when the Fed meets, and they're talking probably one more by the end of the year. So if this kind of goes through tonight, I mentioned we can't close this issue for 30 days, but we could be ready to sell bonds as quickly as 2 weeks. We just prepared an official statement for the note issue, so we have all the documentation. We just got to kind of change some names and figures, and we can be ready to go very quickly.
So if we do the approval of the ordinance, we just leave the rate, we're approving the dollar amount, you guys get your rates.
We'll just go for the lowest possible rate, assuming the cash flow works, and we'll just cross-check all that with Melissa and try and just get you the best deal possible.
I'll make a motion to approve that ordinance.
You're introducing it?
Introduce the ordinance.
Second,
And also make a motion to waive 3 readings.
and I'll second it.
Okay, roll call on the motion to waive.
Creachy?
Yes.
Ideas?
Yes.
Rappel?
Yes.
Sweet?
Yes.
Nagel?
Yes.
Warford?
Yes.
Okay, any questions on the ordinance itself? Roll call on the final reading.
Creachy?
Yes.
Ideas?
Yes.
Sweet?
Yes.
Warford?
Yes.
Rappel?
Yes.
Nagel?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Betty.
Okay, number 5, levy and assess the costs and expenses of the work to abate a nuisance at 108 West First Street.
So this individual has been given ample opportunity to pay this and ample opportunity to object to any of it. And this was a removal of overgrown vegetation that was blocking the site triangle.
It looks terrible.
Well, this is from last year, actually, so,
Oh, this is last year's?
yeah.
What did we do on this a month ago?
We approved the
The levy?
cost
The
of it.
cost, okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is authorizing filing a lien.
Okay. I mean, what other choice is there? Just not filing? I mean, we have to, I guess.
Yeah.
So do you need a motion?
Yes.
I would make that motion. I will second.
Yeah, and just to explain, you have, under our nuisance abatement process, you have to do this because the other side has the right, at this point, to come in and say charges weren't appropriate. They passed the time to object to the abatement process, right? But now they could object to the filing of the lien as a result of the cost, so it's just an extra step you're required to do.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Creachy,
Yes.
Sweet,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Rappel,
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Warford.
Yes.
Number 6, discussion regarding allowing the use of golf carts on the city streets and within city limits.
Do you want me to go up there or talk to you guys from over here?
The microphone was here.
Okay. To start off, I was just going to refresh your memory, the difference, what exactly is considered a golf cart. We have the ATV, UTV registration already in full swing. Part of Chief Bodler's report shows the number of registrations. We've had 28 vehicles registered as of today. And then with 0 incidences. They haven't issued any citations regarding those so far. As far as golf carts go, those are 4-wheeled vehicles whose speed is attainable in 1 mile, that is more than 20 miles an hour, but not more than 25 on a paved level surface. Or a 3-wheeled vehicle whose speed is attainable in 1 mile, that is not more than 25 miles an hour. Gross weight is less than 3,000 pounds, and it is equipped with a windshield and occupant protection system. That's the state statute for what the definition is of a golf cart. State statute already has some restrictions that would be for us to consider. These are the bare minimum that we would need. No operating, only operated between sunrise and sunset. Class O operator's license. Can only operate on streets with a posted speed limit of 35 miles an hour or less. Can only operate upwards of 20 miles an hour. But there is no state statute that requires anything as far as lights or safety flags are concerned. Some things to consider when we're talking about the ordinance and what you guys want in the ordinance and how we want to spell out this registration process for specifically golf carts. Right now, there is no current form in the police's JDS system. That is where we got our form for the ATV and UTV registration, and it's how they're tracking any future violations and being able to know, we have those steps as to what kind of restrictions they would have if they do have a violation. So there would be a cost incurred to set up one specifically for golf carts. That could be done in September or October if we decided to do that through the JDS system. The stickers that we're currently using for ATVs and UTVs would still be able to be used for golf carts, so we wouldn't have to add anything extra there. And then my bigger questions were, what are we considering a start date for golf carts to be allowed, and then the cost. I would assume that we're going to keep that the same as the ATVs and UTVs. When we look at those two things together, we haven't offered any proration for ATVs and UTVs. So if we started the golf carts before January 1st, we would be charging individuals $100 for that registration for an even shorter window of time than we did this year for ATVs. So those are just kind of my bullet points on the topic.
So specifically with regard to the JDS system, I think that is valuable for their record keeping from that side of it. We were able to, I didn't even know that there was a form in JDS, but when Christina and Stephanie were working through this application process, and Stephanie came across this form, it's in JDS, and it has actually worked out very well. And we would like to have a similar form created for a golf cart if you guys want to move forward with them.
Seems like that makes sense.
So, can you read the definition of the actual, where you started, the definition of a golf cart again? Does it say it has to go between 20 and 25? Because that's how I heard that.
A 4-wheeled vehicle whose speed attainable in 1 mile is more than 20, but not more than 25.
So a golf cart by state definition goes exactly between 20 and 25 miles an hour?
Not
No,
18.
it has to be able to achieve.
That in 1 mile.
At least 20.
Right, so if my
Right.
golf cart can't go faster than 18, it's not a real golf cart.
Yeah, there's a separate
But-
statute
yeah,
then
that's
for,
Then it's a slow-moving
for,
vehicle.
Right,
yes,
yes.
yeah,
But if it goes more than 25, now it's a UTV.
yes.
Right.
So this law is specifically for anybody who owns a vehicle, a golf cart, that happens to be able to get to 20 miles an hour but can't get past 25.
Yes.
What a narrow window.
Yeah,
And they
Who
better,
wrote that?
and they better not have taken their governor out.
Someone at
And
the state level.
why was he mad at his neighbor because he had one that would go 23?
Right.
And how can you look at a vehicle and say how fast it's gonna go?
Yeah.
Are we gonna have a
Most
test
your-
track?
Right, is Chief gonna find track that he's gonna
I would
see if he can get
imagine
it up to 20?
a golf cart is generally set to run between 20 and 25.
Most of, I called my buddy when we started talking about this the other day,
Like
or
your-
2 weeks ago, and I
like
just
your
said,
old
hey,
ones.
how fast does yours go? His cap's out at 17. No matter what he does, it won't go faster than 17. Right.
17
Like
does.
the ones that are on the golf course, what are those things, 8, 10, generally speaking? I mean, they don't move very
Roller
fast.
gas and our governor, they have a governor on them, and they can be adjusted to go faster.
Yeah, and
And your electric ones have a chip set in them that regulates them to a certain speed.
Okay.
Based on it. Now, you can, I don't know about all, because I'm not a golf cart expert, but I do know that a lot of carts, you can buy the performance chip to make them go faster for the electric ones.
I'm not sure if
Isn't
Robert's
there-
that's taking us down a road. I don't think we want to.
Well, and I would assume,
Talk about that.
Chief's just, there's a section that says is designed and manufactured for operation on a golf course for sporting and recreational purposes. So that presumably is what he's gonna do. Does it appear to be designed to be
Yeah.
on a golf course? If it does, he's not gonna get into the minutia of,
Yeah, I don't think
determining
we talk about
exactly
chips and.
what
Well,
the
that's
speed
what, this is
is.
where I'm confused, right? Again, I go back to, I've got a 4-seater, that's not necessarily designed for a golf course. It's got 4 seats, but it's built with a golf cart frame, which, a traditional golf cart frame.
Yeah.
Right.
Is that a UTV or is it a golf cart? And what we're saying is, well, if it goes between 20 and 25, it's a golf cart, and if it's over 25, it's a UTV.
So what
And
is
again,
it?
who's testing
So
that, and
what
how do we
is it?
figure that out?
What is it if it only goes 17 then?
That's what I'm asking.
It
Slow moving
can't be
vehicle.
licensed. It's a slow-moving vehicle, which we don't have a provision.
But what we're also saying is you need a driver's license, and if there's no headlights, you're only gonna drive it daylight hours.
You can only drive in daylight hours, headlights or not.
Right.
That was
Yeah,
a question, that was a question I wanted to clarify, was that state statute is only sun up to sundown.
Yes.
Regardless of,
So that there's
Right.
Time
no,
only regardless.
there's no getting home from the golf course at 10.
No.
yeah, and to me, that, the less than 20 miles an hour thing is, again, if it walks like a golf cart, if it talks like a golf cart, it's a golf cart, Chief's gonna approve it. You're not gonna get into, can it actually get to that speed, that sort of thing, right?
Right.
Just, and we can't read exceptions into the ordinance,
Right,
because
that's what I'm trying to
that's what
figure out,
state
like,
statute
Yeah.
says.
really
The
But it's an
enfor-
enforcement question.
enforcement would be
Yeah.
the,
We can make them more restrictive,
But
like
not
we would say you have to have a flag,
Yeah,
or,
Or you have
Sure.
to have
Yeah.
headlights and taillights.
yeah.
Right.
But in terms of what it is, we have to just mirror the definition of the statute, right? And then leave it up to chief as from an enforcement.
There's no
perspective.
requirements for turn signals, so that's up to the driver to use the proper legal
So,
hand
yeah.
signals.
I guess where I'm trying to keep with it is, hey, if you have a golf cart and you wanna own one in town and actually wanna use it at the golf course, not just crossing Chestnut, but be able to drive out there, you have to be able to go 25 miles an hour or more in order to register as a UTV in order to get out there. Otherwise, there's no way to get out there from town.
Correct, that's the
Because the
practice.
state law says you can't drive it on a road with a speed limit of less than 35, or more than 35.
Right.
And Chestnut's 40.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you can cross Chestnut.
You can cross it.
Yeah,
So if you live in Heritage Heights, you can
Heritage
cross
Heights,
Chestnut.
sure, but
yeah.
But yeah, if
that's a very
near
limited
you,
population of the city.
that's where most of the golf carts come
Yeah.
from for the golf course.
That's because they're the ones that can get there right now.
Yeah, yeah.
illegal.
illegally.
Yeah,
Illegally.
sure.
Well, but they
But
don't.
when you're only on the road for
But that, I mean, there's people in town that want to do the same thing.
Yeah.
yeah.
But I'm not excited about entertaining changing the speed limit down to 35 so that people in town can drive out there for the 3 people a year that do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, thousands of other people who are affected by that. So I'm just trying to find a way that works for
What
everyone
is-
while
is-
working within the
is
state and their student.
The master trail plan, does it have a trail that eventually runs down the old highway and out that direction?
Chestnut.
I don't think so, it's a bridge they're waiting for.
They're trying to figure out how
Because
to
you
get
have to
under
get past
the
the
tracks.
rocks.
Most of the funding sources that we've used for trails don't allow any kind of golf carts
Oh,
or.
so even if you
ATVs,
built one,
ATVs, Yeah.
they wouldn't fix it.
Yeah, no motorized vehicles.
And so
There's no
then,
horses, but people still use.
so then is there any way to address the 10 to 20 golfers that play till dark? And
That's
then,
time to go home.
and then go home?
Yeah, because a lot of times, like I
Stay
say,
warm
leagues
up.
depend on the time of year, time of sunset, sunrise. You know, leagues are from 6 to, say,
Especially end of the year.
8:30. At the end of the year, by 8:30, it's getting really dark. And so if people are, I'm just gonna use Heritage Heights for example.
I thought you couldn't drive down Chestnut anyway, so with any of the UTVs or.
But to get from Heritage Heights, ATVs and UTVs you can,
You can drive
Yes.
on Chestnut?
Yeah, there's no
Yes.
limits.
because there is no limit on the speed limits, but yeah, to your point, that again crosses into the enforcement issue. You know, chief in or police officers driving down, they're, I'm sure, gonna use common sense to say, is it too dark? This person should have been smarter as to when they left the golf course, right?
And I would say most that
And
are
that local-
driving at dusk, they have lights, they
Yeah.
have, I mean, they're,
But that's, again, that's state statute, there's nothing we can
Right.
do to get, it's the same thing with.
like
I've
Joe
had
had said,
people
it's
ask about-
enforcement.
They're out messing around, working till dark in a Ranger or something like that. I'm like, well, yes, you're right, legally you can't drive at home. Headlights, taillights, brights, turn signals, none of that matters, you can't drive at home.
And I
State
will say
statute says-
for years, I use Halloween as an example.
Yeah.
There is an exorbitant amount of
Yeah.
golf carts being driven around after dark.
But like Melissa said, illegally.
No,
Yeah.
and
And it's still illegal, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd still wanna move forward with getting golf carts done, I just,
Yeah,
I'm mildly annoyed with their definition of a golf cart.
Yeah,
just mildly, it seems like a little more.
Alright, I'm a little more. Like, your definition, like, I don't know, it's got four wheels and it looks like a golf cart. Like, well, that's a pretty poor definition, so.
Allow gators on the golf course and move fine.
Can there be a stipulation where you can't have them on primary streets, just on secondary streets, just for a safety and nuisance standpoint for other drivers that are not veteran drivers, just 16-year-old kids, 17-year-old kids not paying attention, texting on the phone, doing other illegal things, just looking out for people not in a structured vehicle, so.
There was conversation with that, with the ATV, UTV ordinance as far as restricting from specific streets. And it came down to, honestly, word from the police chief saying, enforcement is difficult enough to know, is this a street or is this the street you're supposed to be on?
Yeah.
Was it Chestnut and First were the big ones?
Yeah,
Can't-
15.
15th,
J Road.
and then they said,
West
not,
3.
not locust near the school. I mean,
yeah.
it was quite a few restrictions.
Yeah, and J Road would effectively make this pointless, right, if you put it on J Road, because you wouldn't be
Right.
able to get from any of those
Well,
developments on that side
yeah.
to the golf
I
course.
think that, to your point, yes, there's concern about safety, but from an enforcement standpoint,
I don't think though, kind of to his point though, I don't know if ATVs and UTVs are going to be as, you know, traffic harboring, you know, as maybe a golf cart.
UTV going 30 miles per hour on a 30 mile per hour street, they're not impeding traffic.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
Golf
Whereas
cart's
a
not
golf
allowed
cart
to go
can't.
over.
But I'm saying,
Has to go at least 20 to be
But
a
I'm
golf
saying-
cart, but not allowed to go
Can't do it.
20.
but I'm saying though, your UTV's not impeding traffic
Yeah.
on Chestnut going
Yeah.
30 miles per
That-
hour
that's my
in
point.
town, but your golf cart going 20 would impede traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good, yeah.
Well, I need to get a radar. figure out-
Or we could, with golf carts, we could have a city statute that says
Mhm.
only in.
You can be more restricted.
We
Yeah,
could definitely
more.
restrict like Chestnut with the golf
Yeah.
carts or something
Yeah.
like that.
And to me, that would make sense.
The one, the, you know,
12
streets where
street.
speed limit is anything over 30, you know, over 25.
Old
that
highway,
makes sense.
77 in
To
Chestnut.
avoid impeding traffic. But I think most people would do that anyway, and we could definitely put that.
You
in
can
law.
cross it, but you
We
can't.
can't, we can't stop other people from driving their cars
20
going
miles per hour.
15 miles an hour down Chestnut, so I don't
No,
know,
you're right.
I don't think it's gonna be this
Well, that's a good point.
mass
Well,
hysteria of parade of vehicles driving 5 miles an hour down Chestnut all the
yeah,
time.
well,
So
it's not
you're-
gonna become a golf cart community.
you're saying the restriction would be if the speed limit is over 25, you can't drive your golf cart.
Would make more sense that way.
Is
Where
that,
is-
That's something to consider. I'm not saying I wanted to do that, I'm
15th,
saying that would
15th
avoid
and Chestnut.
the whole roll all the way down Chestnut.
I think I'd
or
make,
getting out to Casey's on 15th.
Chestnut is 30.
Right,
All
so
the
that's what I
way
said, it would avoid the whole
Eliminate it.
of Chestnut.
And
15th,
eliminate 12th Street.
15th Street from Chestnut to the west is 25 until you get to Hackberry.
Right, so it would just be from
From Hackberry
there to
to
Casey's.
Hackberry, so dog park.
And then Hackberry up to the school would be out.
I think this gets us back to where we were though.
Enforcement.
I don't think, yeah, and
Well, I
again,
think-
like I said, it's something we could do, but I
think that'd be a fairly easy enforcement though, wouldn't it? I mean,
think
mean,
we
I'll
wait and see if that's
eliminate
an
those
issue, and if it
streets.
becomes an
elimination
issue,
of the
then we
street
can
over
always.
Yeah, I would
65
think
mile
so.
an hour.
I would think it'd be easier than what we had
Yeah.
looked at with ATVs, UTVs. That one was really slicing and dicing.
Yeah, you were getting into First Street.
This one would be
Getting
more
into-
speed limit related.
Yeah, just.
I think this would be easier.
Yeah.
I would go, I would go back to the same thing I said when we talked about the other one, though. If you put that in place, you'll never know if you don't need it, because it's already in place. If we say, no, we don't need to worry about that, and then we find out, hey, we're impeding traffic and this is causing some problems, we can always go back and put that in place.
Well, the
That's
easiest one to do is just say Chestnut. Just
Right.
eliminate Chestnut right off the bat even. And not worry about those other ones, because how many people are really
But if
maybe
my-
driving out to Casey's on their golf cart?
I was gonna say, if I can keep up with traffic with my UTV or my golf cart, it doesn't matter, but if I can get my golf cart to go more than 25, it's not a golf cart, so I guess it doesn't matter. Sorry, I'm hung
That's
up
true,
on
no,
this.
you're right, yeah.
So.
And that's what you would do. If you had a golf cart that could go over that,
Just
you would want to
register it as
register it as a UTV. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that could be done today then?
Yes.
Right? Right now, if I've got a golf cart sitting in my house, big
It
four-seater,
goes
and I
26.
get that thing to go 26 miles an hour, I can register as UTV and drive around town.
Yeah, you
Put a
just
flag
have to
on it.
add the flags and
With the
stuff.
flag and sticker.
As the spark arrestor.
Yeah.
It has to have a spark arrestor.
Okay. Interesting.
That's what's in
I
state
didn't know
law,
that one was
yeah.
in there.
So if we would have her write up a ordinance with Chestnut at least, or maybe, and these other streets, and at the next meeting, we can easily cross something out. And then present it.
You're also saying as a go date though, it would be better to wait, did you say until October, until these?
No, until January.
My suggestion is January.
Did we,
35.
just to bring it back up, is this an annual registration? Did we set this
It
up
is.
as an annual thing? I didn't
Yes.
realize that. I thought it was like one and done.
No.
I missed
And
that.
it's just like your car, you gotta register it every year.
I didn't
And
realize that.
that's part of the reason why I think a January 1 start date makes more sense.
I would agree with that.
I do too.
That gives us 6 months where we're well into the flow of the ATV, UTV, and we're not charging $100 for 3 months of use.
I agree.
Probably November, December, they might not be driving the car anyhow.
Right. Might get a little
You're not putting a
chilly.
plow on that one and run around.
They're getting off the golf cart and into the UTV.
Can't drive it after 5 o'clock.
Yeah, right.
When it gets that,
I'm sorry, I'm hung up on that, and I'm thoroughly annoyed by it.
so,
I agree with what you're saying.
Oh, never mind, I need to pass this.
so we'll have it on the agenda next time
Yep.
for an ordinance with what we've discussed here, and then we can cross off.
And nothing else that you're asking Christina to add to it? No flags,
Yeah.
nothing like that?
I
presumably?
Flags are dumb.
wouldn't hurt my feelings to have, you know, there have to be headlights and taillights. That's just my opinion. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
I don't know, the headlights are all that, I don't know.
Just to see
In
the,
town, I don't see that being a huge.
I do agree with Shane,
Brake
especially if you drive that on the street, just to have the taillights so people can see when you're braking.
Well, that's brake lights instead of taillights.
Brake
That's-
lights.
And that's
There's
a
no-
harder switch to put into a golf cart. I mean, how that gets wired in, I mean, that's customization. You're asking people to get things customized in order to get brake lights.
My kids.
Can you? I don't know anything about them. As far as the brake light kits.
I think it's worth talking about instead of, I think it's worth talking so it may be changed to later or cut later rather than not including it initially.
Or is there a reflective triangle or something? I don't
Yeah.
understand.
Okay,
That'd be on your golf cart that goes 17 miles per hour.
Yeah, right.
Which by design, you shouldn't need it because you shouldn't be out when it's getting dark.
Right.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
No, but it is
Yeah.
more of a safety issue.
Yeah.
Hitting the brakes and you've got a car behind you, they don't know you're hitting the brakes.
yeah.
Like sometime the car manufacturers switch to daytime running lights because it's a safety. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't turn those off on my brakes.
Okay, let's go on to the next one, and I guess we can come back to that and open discussion again if you feel necessary. Presentation of information regarding requested feasibility study of city facilities.
So if you recall, I think, was it May? We had a public meeting with the city, a work session of the city council where all department heads were in attendance, and there was 3 questions that you asked us to investigate and determine. The first was, when talking about city hall facilities, the existing city hall, is it possible to add a second story? The second was, we were at the time discussing the possibility of additional property in this block where we sit here. Would a city hall facility fit in that space? And the third question was, would the same estimated square footage work at the Civic Center property in that square? So Ryan Hurst and I did have a couple sit-down conversations with Corey Broderson and Marv Larson. Those were both the individuals that worked on the previous presentation of information we had about a year or year and a half ago. The square footage that they used in their analysis for City Hall was based off of that, the 8,500 square feet, which I think is a fair number to use for something we would need moving forward for city and utility functions. So it's regarding the structural analysis, second floor feasibility for the existing city hall. The way the facility sits currently, it would not be capable of sustaining any additional load. The way they described it to me is that anything is possible, but it could be accomplished only by basically building a shell over our existing building and adding a second layer. So
Which would be a.
cost prohibitive.
Yeah, self-sustaining.
Right. So moving to the second question, which was laid out on this, the lot over to the west of the library. It would be possible to fit a roughly 8,500 square foot facility there. That's zone C1, so there's 0 lot lines. We didn't count the number of parking stalls required. I'm not sure what our zoning regulations, that didn't come into play in this conversation. So you're seeing there would be a one-way drive for the drive-up window, which Ryan emphasized is actually very important to the utilities. There's a possibility of to the south of this building where we could have added diagonal on-street parking like we have downtown. And the last was the location of the 8,500 square foot facility at the Civic Center property. And so previously JO had done a conceptual layout for an additional gym space and locker room space in that location with a commons entry, a common area entry. So you'll see here the 8,500 square foot sort of fits on the lot, but when you start adding all of the other things, it does get very tight. The other thing that's not possible without eliminating the parking stalls along the north side of the property or anywhere would be that drive-up window. That would take away some of the driving stalls. The other point with this is that it really limits any possibility of expansion beyond just this conceptual idea of one court, adding one court and an entryway. So that is what you asked for. I guess if you have any questions, I can try and answer them. Ryan and I did review this with Marv and Corey from JEO.
So the 8,500 feet was used
Square
in
feet.
both the conceptual drawings that we looked at. And is that number based on what we need today versus adding in some growth, or is that, where we built 8,500 feet?
So the 8,500 square feet was something that they pulled from the previous, they looked at 3 options for City Hall and, was it, and I think we reviewed this in that study. And that was the number that they proposed for a new facility. Because we looked at
You're right.
using the City Hall the way it sits now with one half for the same functions, the other half for the police functions, and then remodeling the base for City Hall council chambers. And then we also looked at the option of remodeling the existing city hall for police and EMS and a new facility outside of that. They gave us some opinion of cost, if you remember that, and they based that off of the 8,500 square feet. And I'm sure that 8,500 square feet, we didn't do any programming of space or evaluation of needs. It was probably driven off of their standards that they have that they pull from. So it might be a little more, it might be a little less than that, but I know our current facility is like 11,000 square feet, so.
That's for both sides,
Pardon me?
Is that for both sides?
That's the
Both sides,
whole,
building?
the whole
Whole
building with
building.
the bays.
So what City Hall is occupying is closer to 5? Between 5 and 6?
Probably, yeah.
Not so much, I mean, actually, the rest of the
So it's
house.
probably closer to 3, between 3 and 4
Three
thousand.
and four, probably.
But I don't think, looking at the space we have now and thinking about the future, we're having it an appropriate sized council meeting room,
Oh,
a space where we
absolutely.
can meet with all the employees, but yeah, I don't think 8,500
No,
is,
we
yeah.
just, I
No,
was
we're
wanting to make
saying
sure that that
you guys
8,500
are
is actually gonna.
Yeah.
barely scraping by or really not even scraping by with
Making it work.
Right.
35, let's just say it's 3,500.
3,500, right, yeah.
Now. And we're nowhere near, but we're talking about expanding out to 8,500 square feet so that
Making sure
you
it's
do have facilities
big
that
enough.
are needed and moving forward, so.
Yeah.
3,000 for chamber, something if that's what it needs, and then another 1,500 for additional growth.
So we're still in.
Well, based on the conversation that we had, and I realize there was no vote taken, but I believe it was a general consensus from our conversations that City Hall, remodeling it for the space to be used for law enforcement and EMS was something that you all were generally in agreement with. So I think moving forward with that, we can have conversations, maybe we need to have another work session about if that's what we're gonna do, then what happens to the rest or
I mean,
I'm open to suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, if we would say that's what we want to do, how long would it take or what would be involved in finding out the cost, size of each one of those departments and the cost to remodel with asbestos removal? Is that a factor of what we do?
Well, that building, we have to remove the asbestos,
Yeah.
no matter what. Even if we didn't want the building and we're gonna sell that in the open public, that asbestos has to be removed.
Yeah,
So to me, I mean, that's primary. And if we can work around that and we end up with a building that is useful for half of it or all of it or whatever departments, we don't know until it's actually useful again. And I just think that has to be done. We
yeah,
have no
I
choice.
agree.
I agree.
I don't know how to get there.
So I think we gotta figure out how we pay for it and what's the
And
move
how do they
forward-
function.
Yeah, what's the move forward plan, so. But yeah, we have to.
So if I come to you at the next council meeting with a proposal, steps of how we can move forward with that facility, with this unanswered question about where city or utility functions would be located, we can have conversation about that?
I would be curious how much time you would be disrupted in cleaning up that building. And by the time you move everybody out, remove the asbestos, and we're to the point where people could move back in, I would be curious on how much time you're talking about. It's going to be a little while. A year? maybe?
So what you're talking about is doing it in phases, or you want to
Move
focus
everybody out.
only on the
You'd have to move everybody-
You'd have to move everybody up. to do this.
focus only on the asbestos and then move everybody back in?
I don't know.
Okay.
No, I'm just, it's just hard to function if you start to disrupt that. I've always been of the impression you just need to vacate.
Right, but then when you reoccupy, is it,
Right.
it doesn't make, you can't move back into that without it being remodeled.
Exactly.
So,
Right. I mean, to me, we have to do something with police.
Yeah.
There's
Yes.
absolutely no security, no efficiency in that department because of what they have to work with.
No, I totally agree. This is just my opinion, and I'm not trying to overstep anybody, but, you know, I think we move forward with the plan, or like we were gonna move forward with that plan, with the EMS and police, and the abatement of the asbestos, and then making that into a functional facility for them. But what is our plan?
Just say, where are we moving this in?
What are the options?
Yeah, where are we moving city council, where are we gonna move
But-
police, where are we gonna move EMS during this time frame as we move forward with that, so. I mean, it's just, so they're all gonna have to think what's gonna happen to it.
EMS is fine where they're at until then. Police is going to go somewhere, but I'm more worried about where does the city go? Because the city's never gonna go back into that, so wherever they go, they're stuck until we figure this out.
Right.
It's a couple steps. That building and where.
So long as that.
You're right, so,
Yeah, but how long, we're gonna leave them in there 12 years when we're trying to.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
I think there are a couple possible locations that we could move to while some of that work's being done.
And this is purely hypothetical, but, so last week, the property over here was recorded and changed hands. Is it a situation where you want me to reach out to the new owner? And the only reason that one didn't go through is because by the time, on behalf of the foundation, we got back to them, he had entered into a purchase agreement. So he legally couldn't sell it, even if he wanted to the foundation. Now that it has been recorded and changed hands, do you want me to reach out to the current owner as to whether or not they are a willing participant in selling?
Probably doesn't hurt, but he probably bought it for a reason.
Yeah,
Well,
and yeah, it
I
may
mean,
go nowhere, but do you want me to at least have the conversation
And
between
what was
now
our
and
purchase price on that, and
Yeah, we know from the dock stamps, the purchase price was actually less than what the foundation was offering. So we actually sold it for less.
that gives hope that because they could, I mean, the new owner could still potentially.
They make a quick profit, yeah.
Wasn't there some changes that had to take place with the
street.
well, the properties themselves as far
Yeah.
as
Two
positioning
or
the
three
building?
lots right now.
Right.
Trying to turn them
I
into
mean,
5.
I'm trying to turn them into 5, yeah.
is that critical to what they want to use, or
For
is
us,
it?
we would make them all one.
Well, I think it'd be interesting to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know, and I know he's heard that potential interest was there.
Yeah.
You know, whether it be from the foundation or for a piece or
Yeah.
something like that, so.
If we, I mean, if we could figure out some way, if they need some property, we could help them find it.
I'll have the conversation between now and next meeting.
Okay.
Okay. I don't have any other comments. Any councilman? Yes.
Our bump outs look like crap.
I actually told my son to do ours
Wow.
today, that's
Well,
next
it's
to our
been a
office.
strange spring.
Yeah.
It's been, and now it's raining. The bump outs, especially on Fifth and Broadway, are like you lose small animals in there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just nasty looking. What is that wild lettuce that grows up with the thorns in
I
it?
saw him pulling that out today.
Really?
Well, they had some deals that required that, all natural, organic.
It seems like every year we have a struggle on trying, and they're hard. I've got one in front of my building, and it's a struggle to keep it clean.
What?
You know, you've got rocks that want to move. You got weeds. Is there an alternative for these bump outs? And is there a way to remove everything out, brick it up, do something?
Get into the tree issue again?
Tree and mulch.
Never been against trees.
Yeah.
I'm just against people doing it when they're not allowed
I talked to
to.
Greg this morning about the
Yeah,
trees.
So many.
One time-
Every year we're talking about it.
I agree.
Think it looks great.
I've never been against trees.
Colored concrete.
Trees clean when they were
Yeah.
not supposed to.
At one time, the community foundation was working on that, but, yeah. But some are doing it and some aren't.
Every year we struggle with that much, and it's-
Yeah.
Good point.
I mean, they're surrounded by concrete, any plant that's in there just gets cooked.
Yeah.
So it takes some special plants. Cactus.
Okay,
Did you get what you needed?
That's
from-
all I have.
okay.
I think so.
Anybody else have any
As
comments?
long as it keeps moving, I just hate to see it.
If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
There's a second. Most people second it. All in favor, say